Well, hello, Tim Crosby here. Glad you're here with me. And got my banjo. And so if you're watching this, you probably have your banjo too. Today I wanted to talk about my favorite way of playing the banjo. Mostly around these parts, they call it clawhammer banjo, but it's one of the interesting things. It's got lots of names in different regions of the country. Different people call it different things. Some people call it frailing. Some people call it overhand. Some people call it downstroke. Ralph Stanley famously referred to this style of banjo playing as knocking or rapping. And you'll realize why here in just a minute. So rather than having finger picks and thumb pick and playing Earl Scruggs style, I wanted to play the older fashioned style of overhand or clawhammer or whatever you want to call it of those names. Very simply, the name comes from the way you hold your hand, or that's my theory. You hold your hand as if you're holding the handle of a claw hammer. You kind of do this, loosely curl your fingers, stick your thumb out, and what we're going to be doing is striking the string only in a downward way. We'll talk about Pete Seeger style some other time. Only in a downward way. So you strike the strings with the back of your fingernail. Some people do use their middle finger, quite all right. I prefer to use my index finger, quite all right. And but what you just saw is me just hitting the string, striking the string with the back of my fingernail. Pro tip, if you can stand to do it and your fingernails are tough enough, I suggest whatever finger you want to use, grow that fingernail out a little bit. I have my fingernails grown out long because I also finger pick the guitar with them, but it's really handy for clawhammer banjo. Gives you a way to do it. Then you notice my thumb, every time I move it, because I'm moving my hand when I make that strike, my thumb comes to rest on the 5th string. So, as you're doing that, practice. Well, I've done it enough so that I can accurately hit other strings, but I'd say just hit your 1st string a few times and let your thumb come to rest on the 5th string, also known as the thumb string. And you'll notice what I'm not doing. I'm not carefully holding my hand still and sticking my finger in there and flicking it with my finger. Don't do that because you'll have to unlearn it later. It's easier not to learn it in the first place. Hold your hand in that position. Strike the string by moving your whole hand. This is why Ralph Stanley called it knocking or rapping, because it's almost the same motion you would make to rap on a door, knock on a door. So you see it's mostly coming from my wrist, hitting that string. And then as you start doing a little bit more of it, hit some other strings, just with the back of your fingernail, moving your whole hand. Okay, what about the thumb? The thumb is going to come in just a second. The clawhammer move, also known as bump ditty, makes a bump ditty rhythm. And so you strike the string once, your thumb comes to rest, you strike the string or even brush all the strings a second time, and then as you bring your hand back up, it's very counterintuitive, as your hand comes up for another strike, you kind of push off with your thumb. So you're going strike, brush, push off with your thumb, strike. There's your bump, diddy, bump, diddy. And there's your basic clawhammer move. That's all there is to it. Easily said that that's all there is to it, but it takes a fair amount of kind of slow motion, think your way through it, practice of getting your hand to make that move of striking the string, letting your thumb come to rest. Now you notice the discoloration right here. That's because every time I move my hand, my thumb is actually coming to rest on the head of the banjo as well. So don't worry about making a tapping noise. That's part of the sound of it. Likewise, over here, you're going to hit this side of the head with the back of your fingernails, and that's part of the percussiveness of this style. So, okay. I'm going to go on to the next step. When you are comfortable doing that, playing some chords, then you're ready to do something called double thumbing, which also leads to drop thumbing. So double thumbing is simply popping that thumb every time your hand comes down. Instead of every other, like claw hammer, now you're going. And there are some regional styles that do that double thumb all the time. It's a real driving, fast-paced style. So I suggest taking that as one's next step after the basic claw hammer move, the basic overhand move, is that double thumbing. Strike or pop your thumb every single one, which then leads to what's called drop thumbing. You're going to also pop your thumb every time, but every other one you're going to drop your thumb to one of the inside strings. And try that with the second string at first and just stick to that. And your thumb drops in on the first of the four, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. That first strike with your finger, let your drop thumb happen. So bring your thumb over to the second string, and then the second strike, you're going to pop your thumb on the third string, or the thumb string, the fifth string. And then that drop thumbing will lead, it'll be the next one of these little videos. I'm going to pick up there with that drop thumbing and show you a bunch of really cool licks that you can do with the drop thumbing. Licks that will drop into, say, bluegrass music. Sounds very much like, or certainly compatible with bluegrass banjo. Still doing the claw hammer. And then we're also going to talk about alternate tunings on the banjo for more old-timey stuff and more melodic stuff. You can play fiddle tunes pretty much note for note the way a fiddle plays it by using that drop thumb. Don't rush. That's my advice. Start out slow. Start out getting it nice and steady. If you've watched my slow is smooth, smooth is fast, take that to heart. Get it smooth and steady without stopping and plucking. You're going to be tempted, I guarantee. Don't let yourself do that. And then practice that accuracy of hitting each string, but by moving your hand, not by picking them out with your finger. I go on and on about that. You might wonder why. Lots and lots of people, almost everybody that I've worked with getting them started playing clawhammer banjo wants to do that because you want to be accurate. You want to be able to hit those strings and not the other ones. Don't do it. Here's the other advice. Dare to be messy. Be reckless. Just strum it. Hit them all. Or if you're trying to hit one, don't worry if you miss that one and hit another one, or hit them all. Just be messy. Grandpa Jones was one of their, or not Grandpa Jones, well, he did it too. He picked it up from Uncle Dave Macon. Look up Uncle Dave Macon. He was the king of the Grand Ole Opry from 1926 until 1946. And his style was, he just whanged away at all the strings. And he was famous. So be messy, be slow, be steady, and play the banjo. I'll see you next time. Glad you were here. Tim Crosby.